Hey everyone, Chris Mack coming at you with a happy little package that came this weekend. But before we dive into what this means, status update. Action figure reviews will be commencing in the near future. I just had to get this studio together to where I can kind of move around and pull figures off the shelves instead of having to dig through the massive amounts of moving boxes. So I finally got that done. It has been a thing. But soon, and to tide us over, this package here comes and thanks to my home slice, Ron. Go check out his awesome group over on Facebook called Geeked Out Collections. Every Friday he does a banner competition. It's a contest competition. And everyone throws up their cool action figure photography or just their collections, and whoever wins by Monday with the most likes gets to be the banner for the week. So it's a really cool little way for everyone to talk and whatnot, and that's how I got to know Ron. Really cool cat. Check out his group. Now, this. He sent these to me because we were talking about action figures and old schoolness. He sent me a complete set of the 1995 X-Men Flare Ultra trading cards, and I wanted to share them with you all, and I'm so excited. I appreciate you, Ron, for sending these to me. Oh, man, how I've always wanted a full set. We've gone over my cards over on TikTok, so if you want to see what I have, go check out that video over on the TikTok channel. But here, love these cards. I miss when the comic artwork like this was so good. And I've said this before, but back in the day, where I'm from, they didn't have a comic shop, or it was more like a revolving door where certain shops would open, but of course they would close. And so it was just very hard. The only way I was able to get any type of information was either from buying the cards whenever I could get my hands on them or through Wizard Magazine at the time. So now to have a full set of this, you guys have no idea how much this means to me. I know a lot of people are like, they're not worth squat. I don't care. I honest to God don't care if they're not worth anything. This was a happy time for when I was a kid. We used to trade these on the, what's that thing called where you go out to recess? The playground. We'd trade them. We buy them off each other for like ridiculously jumped up prices. But man, I mean, look at the quality. They did not have to go that hard on these trading cards, nor the books for that matter. But good grief. I mean, look at this. All these different artist renditions. And then what I mean by using the trading cards to get information is they would actually give you at least some sort of synopsis. So like, let's say if you were just new to the X-Men world, and you saw this and you go, what the hell is a Sentinel? It would tell you it's a giant 20-foot tall robot that was the creation of inventor Bolivar Trask. Using an arsenal of weapons, they are programmed with one single-minded mission: to capture and eradicate all mutants. Now, one thing about these runs is they don't give you comic numbers. So there was I think it was 97, they put out scenarios like Fatal Attractions and whatnot, and they would tell you what the scene was from, like when Wolverine gets his adamantium ripped out. I think that was X-Men 25 from Volume 2. So that helped me a lot when I would go to comic shops. But still, look at that Nimrod, Omega Red, Mojo. I know a lot of people don't like Mojo, but I love the Madness. The fat one, as they call him, and of course Magneto. Jean with that really great looking Phoenix fire for her hair. And just look at the way that they would do the body in motion. A lot of people say, well, a lot of these poses are not anatomically correct. Well, excuse me, Mr. Non-existent person that I'm arguing with, but you got to remember, these were comics, so they're allowed to bend in unproportional ways. It's not like we're taking an anatomy class here. And of course, Albert. I miss Albert. And what was her name? It wasn't Ellie Mayer. It was Ellie something or other. Let's see if it says here. Hold on. A mechanical construct created to mimic Wolverine and destroy him. Albert couldn't match the fighting ability of the original until he upgraded himself, becoming smarter, uglier, and deadlier. So it doesn't say, but her name was like Ellie 1 or Ellie May. And what's great here is that it says artist Tom Taggart. So another great thing there is if you want to check out more of the person's artwork, like this was Bob Larkin. And look at that. Oh, I just love how they're little trading cards with beautiful museum quality painting. Like this one of Arcade was Joanne Daly, I think is how you pronounce the name. Okay, let's continue going through these. And look at that Black Tom Cassidy before he kind of became that more annoying version of himself in the Krakoan era. Bloodscream. Awesome villain for the Wolverine comics. Of course, the Brood has that very dingy, nasty look to it. And this was Javert. If you're not sure who Javert was, he was the antagonist in the adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix when the mother Ascani sends Cyclops and Jean to the future to raise their son Nathan after they gave him up in the pages of X Factor when Apocalypse infected him with the techno-organic virus. So they're actually getting to see their son thrive, but of course he doesn't know that they were his parents. They called them, there was Red and Slim is what he called them, so they became surrogate parents even though he didn't know they were real. But anyway, Javert was working for Apocalypse and protected Strife, who was the clone. And then Colossus. Now, I haven't watched X-Men 97, but I kind of see where they're going with it with Wolverine. Basically, they're doing the latter half of Fatal Attractions. Now, what happened around that time period is Ileana lost her limbo powers and she became a little girl again instead of the teenager we knew from the New Mutants, and she got infected with the techno-organic virus. And around the same time, Colossus's brother Mikael died, and so he didn't have anything, and he was so mad at Xavier for not being able to save his sister that he just went to Magneto's side just to kind of get away from it all. So he was an acolyte for a time, and then of course that's Copycat. So if you don't know who Copycat is, in the Deadpool movies, what is her name? Vanessa Carlyle. So the girlfriend in the Deadpool movies is Copycat, but they have not shown her mutant powers yet, but that's who Wade's love interest is in the 616 universe. Cyber, of course, has the adamantium just like Wolverine. And then this, I love this. Who was the artist? This was Mark Sasso, Sasso. Every time that I've done a Cyclops pose, it's always come back to this piece. I didn't know that this was part of the Flair Ultra. I just seen it online a million times, and I just loved it. So if you go back and watch the Cyclops review where I have him doing this pose, it was very much an homage to that. And then, of course, look at that. The madness of the Dark Phoenix. Dazzler back in her 80s days. Domino. Exodus. The way Exodus should look when he was sort of a villain. The only other version of Exodus that I will consider canon was the Age of Apocalypse version. And this is Fitzroy. Fitzroy was the villain from the future that Bishop came from. Bishop came back in time chasing for him because he's sort of like a vampire. He has to suck mutants' mutant abilities in order to thrive or to create his time portal. So in a sense, he's kind of like Sauron. And then, of course, Gideon, who also first appeared with Deadpool and New Mutants 98. He's an external interesting character. So check out the X-Force reviews that we've done on that. And then Grizzly, part of the, the 6-pack, 9-pack, 8-pack, Cable's first team before he started X-Force with Domino. He was an awesome character. Haven, I've never heard of Haven. Let's see what she has to say. Haven has the power to open dimensional portals, although she preaches harmony between humans and mutants. She simultaneously works to create global catastrophe she believes will usher in this new era. I've never heard of Haven, so if y'all have any information on her, let me know. And then Hodge, the betrayer of X Factor, the one that basically orchestrated Warren losing his wings. So make sure to check out the early pages of X Factor for him and then he's reoccurs, in the Parallax? What was the name of that when they introduced Generation X? I can't remember. It was called the Parallax something or other, but he's part of the Parallax just like Doug was. Juggernaut. Kane, of course, another one of the original Cable's members who's after Deadpool. Hey, look at that. We got a double Dazzler, and I'm okay with that. The Extinction Agenda. This is when Genosha was sort of a very... if you haven't read the Extinction Agenda, just go read it. They did the mutants dirty when Genosha was a thriving economic power. And then Archangel and Apocalypse. This goes back to the early pages of X Factor, which was 12? Somewhere around there when they first introduced Angel as Archangel after Apocalypse made him a horseman. And then this one, I think it's after Yeah, it's definitely after Inferno. I think it's X Factor 34 where Cyclops kills Sinister for the first time. Love that. Magneto versus Professor X. So I think this is in the pages of Fatal Attractions when Charles shuts Magneto down for what he did to Wolverine, which leads into what everyone's speculating, Onslaught. Yep. And then, of course, Wolverine getting his adamantium ripped out in X-Men 25. Omega Red versus Wolverine. I think this was X-Men number 4 or 5 when they first introduced Omega Red. And then Cable versus Wolverine with the Berserker Brown. And then Shadowcat. We just recently went over where she first named herself Shadowcat, which was in the pages of Kitty Pryde and Wolverine issue 5, where she says, she's now has these things that were ingrained in her from Ogun when he psychically attacked her, and then all the things Wolverine had taught her, and she goes, I'm part of the night. I'm like a cat, Shadowcat. And she says that Sprite and Ariel no longer fit her, so we are seeing Kitty grow and becoming a new character. So I love that she always kind of had that sort of ninja look in the early pages. But look at that, a second Sentinel, hell yeah. And then Jubilee, Generation X. I wish they made a pilot episode way back in the day, and I wish that they would have went forward with it, but at least say that it is out there. So this is the kind of design that she had, where all the Generation X students had the long yellow boots and the red outfit. And then this one is Cyber versus Wolverine. And if you notice, I don't know if I can get it on camera here, but this was after Fatal Attractions. They come to find out, the biggest thing, spoilers if you never read the comics, you come to find out in the Claremont days, everyone always thought that the adamantium claws were just part of the adamantium process. Like that was just something that was scientifically put into his wrists. But in the next issue, which I think is Wolverine 75, which is the epilogue to Fatal Attractions, Wolverine's in the danger room, and you actually see him run from one of the robots, and Beast's like, that's something we've never seen on Logan's face, fear. And so he tries to overcompensate and says, I'm still the best there is at what I do. And he goes to pop his claws, and you just see this blood curling. In the next page is him on his knees, blood smeared everywhere, and you hear Beast off screen go, my God, they're bone. And that was the first time that we found out that Wolverine's claws were a part of his anatomy. Which Lin Wein, when he created Logan, initially said that he didn't want the claws to be part of it, wanted to be part of the costume. But Chris Claremont in the gang, I think it was Dave Cockrum, because he was the first artist, along with Lin Wein on Giant Size X-Men, said, wouldn't it be gross if it was part of him? And they went, ooh, yeah. And that's how Logan's claws became a part of him. But they never referenced it in the early Uncanny. It wasn't until Fatal Attractions that it was brought to everyone's attention. And then, of course, Strife, the clone of Cable, who wants to usurp Apocalypse for being... Because the whole thing with Strife and why he hates Apocalypse so much is whenever Apocalypse's body is going to die, he takes over another mutant, which Bryan Singer kind of touched on in X-Men Apocalypse, which I hate that. Anyway, Strife was supposed to be the next host of Apocalypse. And in the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, we see that Apocalypse is raising him from a child. Like him and Cable are the same age, obviously. But when the transference starts to happen, Apocalypse realizes that he's a clone. And he says, get away from me, you impurity. So that was a mental scar on Strife, and why he wants revenge on Cable, Scott, and Jean, as well as Apocalypse, because he doesn't want to feel inferior. That's kind of the whole shtick of Strife. And then, of course, we all know in Sabanur. If you have never read The Age of Apocalypse, we've gone over it, so I'll leave a playlist here somewhere. But when he took over the world, he is someone not to be trifled with. And then here we are, the homage to X-Men issue 25, when he gets his adamantium ripped out. Anytime you see it, it is just so damn harrowing. I'm waiting for the X-Men 97 show to come out on Blu-ray so I can watch it, because I don't want a Disney Plus subscription. No. But I love that with Morph, they gave him the Age of Apocalypse Morph face. So I'm excited to see how that implements into the show. So yeah, glad that's in there. And then Siren. the daughter of Sean Cassidy, who becomes a part of X-Force. And poor Teresa, man, her early run and the Nakezia Lee-filled X-Force run, she has so many things that she needs to overcome. And thank God for Warpath, because he's there for her through thick and thin. Another Domino, great one. Gone over her first appearance, so make sure to check that out. And then good old Sam Gerthy. I'm still trying to hunt down the issue where he officially left X-Force, which it was the second volume, I think, or was still the latter half of the first volume. It was before Legion's Quest, which led in the Age of Apocalypse, I believe, because that's when the team kind of turned to Forge and Mystique and all them. But yeah, that was a big one. And when him joining the X-Men there after the Age of Apocalypse during Onslaught, it was cool to see Sam Gerthy finally come into his own. I wish we could have seen more with what happened with Danny and all of them. Oh, look, a second Cable. Nice. Strong Guy, Guido Corsair, or Costan. How the hell do you say his name? I can never pronounce his last name, so if y'all can help me, let me know. But yeah, Guido's great. Gone over his action figure, gone over a few of his comics, so check that out. And then the Raging Cajun. I'm wondering, again, I've not seen 97, but I have, seen bits and pieces, social media. It's hard to not get spoiled. So for those of you who haven't seen any spoilers, beware. But from what I understand, he dies. Now, I'm betting that they're not going to do the multiverse thing, but there was a latter half, I think it was the mid-2000s, I don't remember what the story arc was, but Gambit basically loses his sight, and he has a hard time coming to terms with that he turns to Apocalypse, and him and Sunfire end up becoming Horsemen of the Apocalypse. We actually see the Age of Apocalypse Sunfire version, and then Gambit, he was weird. He came back he looked sort of like random with the gray skin, but then he had long white hair. It was a weird time. And then, of course, our own Southern Belle Rogue. One of my favorites, always has been, always will. I think, God, I can't even remember. I've done so many comic reviews, but I think we've gone over her original backstory, which was in Classic X-Men 37. It was the one that was basically overtaking an Uncanny X-Men 139, the death of Jean Grey. Because in the Classic X-Men comics, they would do follow-up stories that Claremont was never able to fit in the original stories. So after they do the reprint of the death of Jean Grey and Cyclops leaving the team, they go into what was her name? Anna Murray. Anna Murray's backstory and how she hurt her first love, Cody. I believe we've gone over that issue. If not, I'll dig it out and we'll go over it. Feel free to check my videos because, yeah, having a toddler, I get dad brain and I forget stuff that I've gone over. Beautiful rendition of Archangel there. And, of course, Bishop, one of my favorite creations from Willis Botascio before he left for Image Comics. And, again, gorgeous work. And I love of Jean Grey, and I love how they actually start to show, because the early 90s, after the Extinction Agenda, when the Volume 2, Number 1 of X-Men, the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont collab, that's when they first introduced the separate teams, the blue team and the gold team. So I love that they show the gold team here, which was Warren, Bishop, Jean, Iceman, Storm, and of course Professor X, which this right here, I'm glad to actually have this trading card. This headshot was one of the promotional images they used when they were promoting the Age of Apocalypse. This was kind of like his funeral portrait. So to finally have it here, very cool stuff. My thing with Forge is he is the one responsible for taking Aurora's powers. Back in the day, he created a machine that would, I think it was supposed to temporarily, or I can't remember if it actually was supposed to fully eliminate mutant powers, but they were going to use it to hunt down Rogue because she had just joined the X-Men trying to reclaim her life after being the Brotherhood. And when Forge goes to fire it, Aurora sacrifices herself. And that's why for a good half of the Uncanny X-Men run through, I think it's the Australian Outback, she didn't have her powers. And it really made her hate Forge, even though she loved him to death. So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Forge in that regard. But if Aurora's going to be with anyone, if it's not Logan, Forge is definitely the one. I loved how in their pet names for each other, where she always called Forge the Maker and he always called her Wind Rider. They just had a great dynamic together. And then Havoc. It drives me nuts that Alex in the beginning always kind of felt like Cyclops overshadowed him. And I felt like when Peter David took over X Factor on, what was it, issue 73, he finally came into his own. So it kind of bugs me that now in these later issues, whenever they bring Havoc back into like Uncanny Avengers or what was it, Hellions, they still show him as a broken, unsure character. And I just wish that they would get over the fact that Havoc is his own person, and it just drives me nuts. And then Polaris, these two have such the most tragic relationship. I wish that they would finally get together and retire like they initially wanted to in their first encounters with the X-Men before she became part of, what was it, Sinister's gang? I think it was Sinister. I can't remember. But yeah, she was not herself for the longest time, and these two have just been through hell and back together. And of course, Quicksilver. I hate that when they did the Age of Ultron, they called them enhanced. I'm like, no, he's a mutant. For the love of God, he's a mutant. And I just wish that they would get his portrayal right on film, because Pietro's always been one of my favorites. And then, of course, the original X-Men, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. That blue and yellow design just looks great. And Slim, before he was called Scott in the next issue. Bobby with the cool boots, the youngest of them all. And then, of course, Marvel Girl. I love how she's using her TK powers to hold that dude upside down. Just a great rendition of when Jean first joined the X-Men. Awesome 70s-looking painting there. Love Hank McCoy. I need to get the issue of Avengers where he finally turned himself into the blue-furred beast that we know, where he was just kind of messing with science, and science blinked back, and that's how he got the blue furry beast. Gorgeous 90s version of Cyclops. Blue team there. And then Forearm, he was part of, I think it was Strife's Mutant Liberation Front. Was that them, the LMF? But I think it was Forearm and not Wild Child, but the guy that had like the Wolverine style hair. I think that's where Forearm came from. And then this is where Emma finally became good and started teaching Generation X along with Banshee. And that was just a great time. And then, of course, our favorite German, pirate swashbuckler, Nightcrawler. Another one of Kitty. Love me some Banshee. Sauron. Another one of those mutant type of vampires. And then, of course, the ugly Toad. I hate when they did Wolverine and the X-Men. I hate that they kind of stopped making Toad look like this and started making him look more like a genetic freak from like how he looked in X-Men Evolution. This is how Toad will always look to me. Or when he got to be a little more creepy in the pages of Liefeld and Nikesia's X-Force run in the 90s. So I just kind of wanted to go through all these with y'all real quick and just sort of throw my X-Men knowledge around, see what y'all think of these cards. Do y'all have happy memories trading these with your friends back in the day, or just collecting them? I cannot wait to get these in my card book. Thank you so much, Ron, for hooking me up with this. This was just really awesome of you, and I'm glad to finally have a good chunk of this set. I am one happy little collector to have these beautiful pieces of art in my happy little hands. So I hope you all enjoyed just something different for this weekend to celebrate all the gorgeous artwork that we got on these Flair Ultra cards. It just always brought back that excitement for reading the comics when you would go through all of these. So as I always say, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.